right, we are going to continue testing our auth service. All right, we just finished change account details, which took a lot of tests. All right, but I think we have a pretty good handle on it. We're going to move on to get profile data. So I'm going to kind of set up the test here, get profile data, and then let's figure out what this should do. So it looks like we're passing in ID. Looks like that's a user ID, and we're going to find the user ID, and then we're going to return the email, name, and username. All right, not too shabby. Okay, so we will say return user name, email, and username with username corresponding to passed in user ID. Perfect. All right. So the first thing we want to do is we want to mock our input or set up our input. So we're going to have const ID is going to be equal to, we've been using 15 for the user ID, so we'll just kind of continue using that. All right. The next thing is that we're actually calling this user service here, and we already tested our user service and the method find user by ID, so we don't need to do it again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh my brain because it's been a few days. And you can see that here we can go ahead and mock. Okay, so we're going to say users service dot find user by ID dot mock resolved value, and we are going to mock the resolved value with what we're calling user, but user doesn't exist yet, so let's kind of make it then. Const user is going to be equal to, and then we're going to say as user. All right, so here we can have ID is going to be 15, name is going to be, I'm actually going to go ahead and just copy this guy here, because that's going to be easiest. And now that I understand what I'm doing. So earlier in these videos, I talked about how when you don't understand exactly what you're doing and you don't have the muscle memory yet, you want to force yourself to type it out every single time. Once you get the muscle memory and you understand what's happening, then you can kind of start to copy and paste to make things faster. Okay, so here what we're doing is we are going to take this find user by ID, and we're going to mock the resolved value to be user. All right, similar to how we did it in these other places. Then we can go ahead and call the actual function. So we can say const result is equal to await. Then we're going to say service dot get profile data, and then we will pass in our ID. So we expect that our result is going to equal, let's actually mock that out too. So we're going to say const returning user, and that's going to be email is going to be equal to user.email. Then we have name is going to be equal to user.name, and then we have username is going to be equal to user.username. Okay? So we expect our result to be equal to the returning user. All right, so let's go ahead and run our test suite and see how we did. All right, perfect. So we passed that test. All right, so that looks pretty good. We don't really have any edge cases for here. I would say that potentially we'd want to add like, well, what happens if the user doesn't exist, and so on. But I'm assuming that when we coded this, we had thought of that. This would be a good moment for us to actually like go explore our code and look at when profile data, this function is being called, and figure out if we are actually handling the errors properly. But for now, that's not the purpose of this video. So we are going to kind of hold off and keep on keeping on. All right, but that was get profile data. All right, we are still not sure about the mocking of the email service, so I'm going to skip this method for now, and I'm going to move on to save new password. All right. So it looks like we are passing in a new password string, an ID, which is going to be a number, and a token, which is going to be a string. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go take our user ID and we're going to go get our user. Then we are going to use the JWT service verify async to figure out whether or not the token and the decoded token secret matches the user's password. Because when we made, so this is like for the refresh password, and if you remember, we have that create JWT, where is it? Create access token, right? If we pass in a secret with it, then we are going to make the secret be that secret. So when we did the password reset, we passed in a secret and we made the secret be the user's password. So now we're checking to make sure that when we decode this token, we're verifying that the secrets match up. So if they match up, don't match up, then we're going to say unauthorized token is invalid. If they do match up, then we are going to save the new password and return the new user or the updated user. Okay, so there's a lot going on in there. So I think the first thing that we are going to start with the first thing that we're going to start with is the case of it works out nicely, and we're going to explore that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull up the information on JWT service NestJS verify async because I'm not really sure I fully understand what is kind of happening with this method. So I'm going to look up verify async. Okay, so the payload comes back. Okay. Looks like we don't care about the payload specifically, and that is fine. All right. Also, I excuse the audio if you hear my daughter chatting very loudly in the background. She doesn't feel like going to sleep right now. So she's just hanging out in bed singing and whining. Okay. So I'm a little bit nervous about how to test this because I feel like I didn't set it up very well, but you know what? We're going to give it a try, okay? Because that's all we can hope for. All right, so we're going to say save new password. And I think I'm going to try to start with catching the error. I think that sounds more fun to do right now. All right, so we're going to say should throw an unauthorized error when the token is invalid. Okay, so then now we can say async and set that up. Okay, all right. So let's take a look here. So it looks like we're going to be mocking a lot of things because we're not really doing a lot of logic ourselves here. So let's start with setting up our inputs. So our input is going to be const new password is going to be equal to fake new password, right? Then we're going to have const ID. That's our user ID, right? So we're going to make it 15 for consistency. And then our token, I don't know why I keep missing const is going, and why do I keep doing a colon instead of equal sign? It's too late. Let's do fake token. All right, no equals, no colon, we do equal signs. We're writing in TypeScript, thank you. All right, the next thing that we can do then is we can do const user. So we're gonna say const user is equal to, and then I'm gonna go grab it from here because I'm feeling lazy. I don't know if you heard me whisper, but I said I'm feeling lazy. So now we have our user that's going to get pulled back. Okay, so now we can say, let's look at how we mocked user service dot find user by ID dot mock resolved value, and that would be user, right? So when we call this function here, we're not actually going to call the service. Instead, we're going to look here and we're going to mock the resolved value, which is user, which is defined right here. Okay? So the next thing that we need to do is we are going to be calling this JWT service. So we need to mock that as well. So we're going to say JWT service dot verify async dot mock rejected value. And then I'm going to go ahead and try to figure out what this is supposed to be. The argument for value was not provided. Okay, so it looks like here's an example. New error, async error. So we can say new unauthorized exception token is invalid. Okay, so then now I'm going to go find my example of when we err on things. So this is going to be up here. You can see we do our try catch block, and then we do an error. So I'm going to just copy this portion of things, and I'm going to scroll down and add it here. Okay, so we are going to try first to call service dot save new password, and we're going to pass in the new password, the ID, and the token. Okay, then we are going to catch an error, and we expect the error message to equal token is invalid. Okay. That's better. Okay, let's go ahead and run this and see how we do. Woo! We passed on our first try, not too bad. All right, so now let's add our other expect statements here. So we would say expect user service dot find user by ID to have been called, and we expect user service dot find user by ID to have been called with ID. All right, let's test how that's going. Perfect. Then we expect JWT service dot verify async to have been called, and we expect JWT service dot verify async to have been called with, and then what do we call the verify async with? The token. So token, and then an object where we have secret is equal to user dot password. All right, now let's try that. All right, very good. All right, so now we are going to need to add the extra statements to get profile data because we forgot those. So we're going to expect that user service dot find user by ID to have been called, and we expect user service dot find user by ID to have been called with ID. All right, let's rerun these tests. Perfect. All right, when we get back in the next video, we will go ahead and do the edge case of this actually working. All right, see you in the next one.